if we look at companies like Notion, like Bold.new, there are principles that underlie their ability to grow fast. Now, this story is about Bold.new, and I'm telling it in order to both influence you and inspire you to grow your software company, and at the same time de-influence you from the idea of an insane growth fast. Now buckle up, because this is a good one. We're going to go through all of the major reasons why Bold.new grew to 40 million ARR in less than 12 months. We will cover paid ads, big hackathon initiatives like hosting world's largest hackathon, funding a movie, creator partnerships, organic content, and basically every major growth initiative that I was able to get my hands on. But I must warn you, if you expect to walk away from here with a set of silly gimmicks or shortcuts, this video is not for you. There is a reason why Bold.new got 60K ARR on their first day, and another 20 million in the next 2 months, and another 20 million in the following 2 months. And it is not because they recycle someone else's social media posts. There are principles, or you can even say values, that made them successful that you can choose to adopt in your work and in growing your company. Now, if you don't know what Bold.new is, it's a chatbot that lets you create applications, so software applications, without knowing how to code. They position themselves as a tool for non-developers. The idea for Bold is that simple. It's just a text box where you write out what you want your website or application to do, and it codes everything on your behalf. And it is because how simple and accessible this tool is that they have seen the fastest growth curve in the DevTool history. That first day 60K ARR and 4 million registered users just kept compounding since. Before we dive in, there's 5 major lessons that I heard the founder of the company, Eric Simmons, share from the experience of growing Bold so fast. Number 1 is failure. Eric and his team worked on their parent company, StackBlitz, for 7 years. They were running out of cash. They were about to shut down. They barely made it to 0.7 million ARR. Let that sink in. Because if it is your month 1, year 3 of running a company, and you think the world owes you the attention and the recognition, that is simply not how things work. Successful founders often have been at it for years and years. We sure have lucky people, and we should celebrate their success and encourage their success. But if you are just growing your company, assume this. Assume that you will be failing for many, many, many years. And you will be in an amazing company of all of these cool founders who did eventually have a breakthrough. And what's awesome about Bold.new is that it was the last experiment that came out of StackBlitz. It saved the company. It was their last, let's try everything before we shut down. And that worked. Now, very closely related to this is the lesson of iterating over pivoting. Very often when we try an idea, we interpret the slightest sign of setback as failure. Let's say you didn't get 50 users in your first week, or you didn't hit 10K on your second month. That is not necessarily a sign to give up on the idea yet. You might benefit much more from first iterating very deeply on an offer or a software that you have, rather than pivoting immediately. If you think about this from first principles, that makes a lot of sense, because you are gaining a deeper understanding into exactly the thing that your customer wants, and you're improving your ability to deliver that, whether it's with a better software or service. Number 3 is focusing on proof over hype. You will see that across most of the things that Bold.new does. They have actually a very interesting story. They've been working on some sort of no-code tool for over a year, and they've delayed the deployment because AI wasn't good enough, or their product wasn't good enough to ship. And you will see that later on in the type of videos they choose to post, and the type of content they go after, in the kind of partnerships that they have, that proof over hype, while it requires serious sacrifices, can be much more beneficial. Now, number 4 is focusing on volume of user conversation as a signal for product market fit. And number 5 was launching simply. And here is why that was important, and why this tweet got them 60K in ARR on their first day. Now, if you look at this tweet, let's say you had a similar product and you exactly replicated the words in this tweet. Maybe you are a YouTuber running an anti-procrastination software that is keeping people from binge watching videos and thinking that they're productive. And so you say, what if YouTube told you when you are doom scrolling and not learning anything? Introducing stopprocrastination.new by cool YouTuber, and then you have the functionality, what you can do with the app, what it connects to like all YouTube videos, and that it's free. Let's say you replicated that exact structure. Would you get 60K from a single tweet? The answer is maybe, because it is a pretty good tweet, okay? The simplicity always wins, but there wouldn't be this crazy growth, right? Look at this. 0 to 20 million in 2 months, 2 million registered users, number one web AI code app globally if there wasn't a good product. So when we think about a successful launch and we just think about launch as a tweet, that is just silly, because there's so much more that goes into launch, and it is building a good product. It is making the sacrifice and waiting here and not jumping in on AI hype because you know that your product is not good enough yet. And it is postponing until you can deliver a solid value to your users. Then when you make a simple tweet and someone does give it a chance and actually likes what you've created, you are going to start to see this flywheel of reactions and people sharing and liking and inviting their friends and whatnot. And obviously it's not as simple as just people sharing. There needs to be a reason for sharing, and we're going to dig into that in a bit. So the mechanics of launch, as explained by the founder, was as such. People see the tweet, they go to bold.new, type in their idea. Within 30 seconds, they get a web application, and that becomes a content of itself. In our YouTuber procrastinator app example, if you have been binge watching YouTube for ages and so were your friends, you can just say, dude, I've actually implemented this thing that I've just learned on YouTube, and now I know 100 words of Mandarin, or now I understand the growth strategy behind bold.new. Right? So the app enabled you to do something that you're proud of, and the inclination that we have as humans is to share that with other people. Okay, so let's quickly summarize the viral loop. User makes something cool with the product. They share it with someone because they're proud. The other person gets curious because, whoa, this person built it so quick. Seems kind of cool. Let me see what the hype is about. And they end up checking out the product too. And now UGC content, which if you are in a marketing universe, you immediately think of this paid, scripted content that other people are produce. Not the case here. The UGC content is people sharing what they've built. It ends up featuring the proof of the capabilities of the app. So it is not hype. It's not someone yapping about what the product can do. It's someone sharing, look, I've built this. Here's a link. Check it out. Now, in all seriousness, this is the real deal. People who think they're just going to copy the entire posting strategy of bold.new, they don't understand. They don't understand that this is why their company grew so fast. Now, product-led growth in the marketing world means the type of growth that comes from user interacting with the product and product having features that motivate and incentivize additional growth. It could be sharing, it could be referrals. The opposite of this is sales-led growth, which involves a big sales department going and pitching people to come and try out the app. And as you can imagine, that is much more costly. So there's two main things here that I think anyone can replicate in their software. Number one is allowing your user to have something that they can instantly share. So in the case of bold.new, it's them allowing people to instantly deploy the thing that they've built. When you go and you type something in your text bot and it gives you an application that you are semi-proud of and you're like, oh, that does the thing. This is actually kind of cool. You immediately have an option to get a URL that then you can share with your friends, with your boss. More so, you can instantly rank it on Google, which is pretty awesome, right? So this allows existing users to bring in a bunch of people from their social circle onto the bold.new website. Notion has done the exact same thing. Remember how easy it is to share a Notion doc? How many companies are sharing their job descriptions on Notion? How many people had templates that are easy to share? And it is because there's a way to create an instant URL that is so easily shareable with someone else that these companies were able to grow so fast. Now, number two is allowing people to use your product for free, to prove the value, to create trust before requiring people to pay you money. I know there's a lot of controversy on pricing. I will not be the pricing expert in this video. I will just draw the attention to the reality that if people don't know you, if they don't trust you, if they're just seeing you for the first time, they're seeing your product for the first time, even if it seems cool, their desire to pay you $10, $20 to check out an application that they don't know if it will or will not work is very, very low. So what Bold did, as you can see, they offer something for free. This is their third bullet point in their launch. Using bold.new is free. And the way they were able to do that, and I had to ask ChatGPT to explain this to me, but instead of paying for GPUs, which are needed to run AI, and usually you would go and rent them from someone else, and that gets really expensive pretty fast, they figured out a way to run their software on the CPUs. So your laptop was essentially powering bold.new. You didn't need to pay for all of this expensive GPUs, and this way they were able to offer it for free to many, many people. And so the lesson in this is that there's probably a way around whatever complicated thing that you're building. You just have to be technically smart to figure that out. I unfortunately have no much further advice on this. Now, the last quick thing here, which I don't think anyone has talked about, the reason I believe so many people got interested and ended up trying out Ball.new? It's because it increased their ability to do hard things. Now, there's this awesome behavioral scientist, I think he works at Stanford, Fogg, I believe is his last name, and he created this Fogg behavioral model that explains when people are likely to act. Now, if something is hard to do, even if people really, really want it, they are unlikely to do it. They're much more likely to do it when their motivation is very high and the thing is easy to do. And so what an app like Ball.new did is it shifted this line of how easy it is to do something from here to over here. So now this entire area became unlocked for people. Before, it was very difficult to do. If their motivation was low, they're not going to make it anyways. If their motivation was high, they still were unlikely to make it, right? So by making it much easier for people to do something, they created that huge incentive for people to follow through and actually check out and try using the app and try building with it. Now, whenever we speak about something going viral and growing, it is important to consider the context in which this thing is happening. So in the case of Ball.new, there's already a context of the vibe coding craze, right? Around February, I believe, or March of this year, we started to see vibe coding pretty much everywhere. It started with this awesome guy, Andrei Karpathy, who is pretty big in the AI space, crafting the concept of vibe coding. That spread like a wildfire on X. People started writing about it in news. Everyone at work is like, hey, are you vibe coding? And so what essentially happened is, let's say you are a random person who just logs in on your X, on your LinkedIn, or Instagram, on your TikTok account, and you see everyone being like, vibe coding is the best. And then I made $20 trillion with vibe coding. I just made the app of my dreams. I just blah, blah. Whatever it is, you see the success, and you, even if maybe cautiously, still get a little curious. A seed of an idea of, I can make some money, I can fix my life in some other way, starts to take place. Why is this important? Because a lot of the content that we will see later on is situated within the context of conversations around vibe coding. Now, does it mean that whatever you're building should necessarily be hyped and that the hype is an important prerequisite for success? Yes, because it helps, but also no. Because if Ball.new launched during the AI hype, which was a year prior, and they didn't have a great product, their launch would not see the success that it's seen, and they wouldn't have the growth, they wouldn't have the revenue growth, which is what essentially matters in the end. So should you chase the hype? No. Should you leverage the hype and position yourself within the conversations that are happening around topics that are already going viral? Absolutely. Okay. Next thing, let's talk about building of Ball.new as a brand. Now, this is a wonderful quote that I found that you can tell from all of the initiatives here and later on is at the core of their growth machine. And it is the idea that user love is difficult to quantify, but it works. And the things that you do that will cultivate user love might not necessarily be visible right away, but they will eventually work. And I think it's fair to say that that decision to postpone the launch because the technology wasn't there, because product sucked initially, was an expression of the love for the users that they didn't even have yet. Now let's look at all of these brand building initiatives. Number one is lead from the front, be in the direct contact with the users. The way this was expressed in Ball.new's strategy is that founders and the team were constantly online engaging with people. And the premise was, hey, if we don't get out of there and we make ourselves visible to people who are using our product, they are going to churn. So they run weekly office hours on YouTube and X. They shared with people what they were building, answered any questions, and basically did the human communication things that AI cannot replace. Now, it's a year later, and if you look at the founder's Twitter, you will see that this guy is still actively engaging with people that are building on Bold, trying to figure things out. This is the founder of a giant company at this point. Their valuation right now is around 700 million. And he is here smashing those replies on Twitter to still be visible to the community. You cannot replace this with shitty AI bots. Now, number two, community content. Bolt hired people whose entire job was just to talk to users, and community became their entire content pipeline. All of the conversations they were having, they turned them into case studies, into bug reports, into tutorials, into new feature ideas. Now, this is actually a very awesome idea. I run a media company where we work with tech founders and startups on building their brand. And very often they come in without an idea of what their content should be about. And my answer almost always is this. the things you find in the conversations with your users and your community, because you don't need to invent clever content angles. Just use the language that people use. And by solving the problems that people have, you're very likely to get engagement in return. It almost feels silly, actually, to talk about engagement, because essentially that is not the point. It is not the point for Bold.new to get 1 million views on their launch. That was not the end goal. The end goal was to get the 4 million people to use and love the thing that they produced. That was the goal. And so when we think about content and we think about virality, these, I think, is the most important thing to keep in mind. That these views, that these engagements are not the main goal. We are not strategizing here for the gimmicks of like, if you say things in this way and you dance like this and you make a backflip. Honestly, I'm just jealous of people who can do a backflip. But if you do a backflip, then you're going to get these views and then maybe you get the users. I think that is just freaking silly. Build something that is awesome. Cultivate user love. Create content that is valuable by listening to what the people are already asking for and talking about. But most importantly, you're going to get people who are using and loving your products or services. Another nice way to cultivate user love is by hiring people from the community. So for Bolt, majority of hires came from community. They just posted hiring tweet, would get tons of DMs. The product management, so the decision and prioritization and what gets built, what feature gets added to Bolt, was also happening via community. So most of their power users were on Twitter or Discord, sharing about things they were struggling with, proposing new fixes, moderating the support, answering to others. And when Bolt's team had to decide which feature to prioritize, they would use the content and the conversations that are happening online and on their Discord and whatnot to source things that users are really, really struggling with or really love. And they would only build things that were requested multiple times or that was validated via their usage data. Last thing, which I think is really awesome, is open source. So they open source a version of Bolt. A lot of times people are like, oh my gosh, but this is, what do you mean everyone's going to steal it and build a Bolt competitor? I see this often on social media when people from similar media agencies are just sharing the sauce. But if you think that this is crazy, you should look around. Because for the content that is going viral, a large portion of it is people offering the sauce. People genuinely just sharing the sauce. Not the watered down version of the sauce, not the sauce without the key ingredient, like actually the sauce. Because that is a way to generate goodwill. In case of Bolt, this is a developer goodwill where developers were able to fork Bolt, improve it, share it, and that way generate free awareness. If you have the service business and you give away the sauce, that would be a way for you to create goodwill with potential clients. There's almost never harm in sharing the meat of what you do. Like Alex Hormozy says, if your entire business is dependent on you gatekeeping a little bit of information or product, it might not be a very reliable business. And the way to move forward is by giving away the sauce and then either getting better at what you do, getting more alpha, or moving up in value in some other way. Alrighty, now let's look at one of the coolest events I have seen that has been a crazy community multiplier for Bolt. It grew their brand awareness significantly. The founder said that this was actually one of the craziest ROI of any of the marketing initiatives that they have done. And what it was is, ta-da, the world's largest hackathon. And it all started with a simple tweet. Some guy, I don't know who this guy is, said, hey, if I was a CEO of this company, I would host this large hackathon, set a Guinness Book record. By the way, this is so cool. When you're shooting for something so big, it's awesome. Do you agree? If you agree, hold that idea, okay? And then he says, imagine 100,000 people are shipping. The founders immediately like, I love this idea. Let's do it. Now let's set a giant cash prize and then find sponsors. So if you agree that this was a big bet and this was cool, you can almost with certainty extrapolate that many other people have felt the same way. And usually when people who are good people and see something really awesome happening, their initial inclination is to help and to become a part of it, which I think explains why they didn't have much trouble finding all of these companies that backed the hackathon and became the sponsor and jumped in and said, hey, here's free credits, here's a bunch of money you can give to people. Because when you do cool things, cool people want to support you. And the money that weren't there before magically appear, the partnerships, the credibility, it all somehow works out when you're going after ambitious goals that are genuinely good for other people. In this case, we had 100,000 people shipping. That'd be so freaking awesome. Why wouldn't you want to support something like this? And so one of the things that happened at the hackathon is that they gave away Bolt Pro subscription to everyone, 10 million plus in free credits from top partners. That's amazing. That is such a huge motivation boost for anyone who ever wanted to try and build an app. Again, if you're an aspiring builder, why wouldn't you try, right? So throwing a hackathon is an idea that came from the community, right? And then it fed back into the community. This hackathon gave them all of these awesome perks and the ability to create and get support from all the people on the Bolt team and many others. What else did it do? Right, it helped Bolt, which, if you think about it, is a relatively new brand, to establish partnerships with all of these big guys, with Anthropic. Like, this is kind of awesome. Anthropic was like, hey, we're going to give you free Claude Sonnet 4. If you were a relatively unknown product coming to Anthropic saying, hey, big guy, let's have a partnership, that'd be so much more difficult to pull off than if you had this viral initiative that was attempting to do something good and was extremely ambitious and just pulled all of these big sponsors in on its own. Now, the coolest part of this hackathon was the content. If we look at people who hosted the hackathon, Eric Simons is the founder, but we have Greg Eisenberg. He has an audience of over 500,000 people who are extremely high intent and who watch his tutorials and are ready to apply themselves to building. Who could be a better host than that, right? But now what's even cooler is who were the judges. All of these people have a combined audience of over 2 million. I estimated this with ChatGPT, and I can bet this is probably a much, much bigger number than 2 million. But to say that these are some of the biggest influencers. If you've ever thought about solo building and being a solo entrepreneur, you definitely know Peter, 100,000%. If you were on TikTok, interested in AI, 100% you've come across Catherine's ChatGPT content. Jason is really famous on X. And now imagine you're just sitting in your apartment spending a weekend, and you have an opportunity to create a project, a website, an app that will be seen by your favorite creators. That's such an awesome motivation. So what happened as a result is that over 1 million websites were created during the hackathon. But what was even cooler is that every participant was incentivized to create content that would then be seen by their favorite creators, by the hackathon judges, by other people online, and supported by Bolt.new community. This flywheel is essentially a masterclass, and if you're ever throwing a hackathon, this is something you would want to replicate. But do notice that every part of this equation in some way reflects that principle of user love, user community, because we don't just have a bunch of famous people. We have famous favorite creators who are meaningful to people who are building. We don't just have a host that has 500,000 on YouTube. We have a host who builds the tutorials that so many people are following already, who is now helping you to build within the frameworks of this hackathon. We're having a solid cash prize. We're having all of this support and tools given to you for free for participating. Everything that is here is non-extractive. It supports the user. It helps them to have a better experience. The content that people create gets amplified and supported by other people. I know of only one example of something similar to this, and it was a program called Build Space, where each week builders were encouraged to share their progress online, and after you share, it was your job to go and comment and engage with 5 other people. And that created an amazing community flywheel, where normally if you build something and you share it with the world, you hear crickets. People don't give a, okay? But here you had a community from the very beginning who were commenting, encouraging feedback, who were sharing their thoughts, who were liking, who were watching. And that is an amazing feeling for someone who is an early builder to experience. Now, the awesome thing for them, obviously, is that now so many people were talking about Bolt, and they got very well known. Obviously, this is just a limited list of people who were partnering on the hackathon. Now, I came across this ad by Lenny's community, which is this very large community for product managers. I was advertising Bolt.new. Amazing partnership and a way to get your product in front of people who have a high intent to use it. But what is even more interesting than brand partnerships is, in my view, creator partnership. Now, tech creators have obviously been around on YouTube for many, many years, but it is just in the recent 1 or 2 years that we're starting to see more cooperation between startups and tech creators. And I think it's a move in an amazing direction. Now, we have your typical paid collaboration model where you pay a creator to talk about your product, but there's a way to get free creator exposure, and it's essentially when you build something that's really cool and you're able to generate proof of hype. So it's either you as a founder, someone on your team talks about idea and it goes viral. When that happens, you essentially are creating an incentive for other creators to talk about it because they know that this conversation has proven to generate hype. And when you're a creator, even though you have your views, you have things that matter to you, you're also very much bound to an algorithm. A lot of creators go and research videos that are well performing within their niches before they generate ideas for their videos. So if you're talking about the world's largest hackathon and your post went viral and then some other creator did it and it gone viral for them, as a tech creator, you are highly incentivized to make a post about the world's largest hackathon, and that's how your company can get all of the free endorsements. I see this a lot with Brad Adcock, who is a founder of Figure, a humanoid company, and he's hired an amazing copywriter. So every other post that he makes goes viral. And after following and engaging with him for a bit, I started to see all the other people who post similar content, who essentially repurpose his story and get some exposure for themselves, but in a way promote Figure for free to many more people. Now, this is probably evident, but the best way to work with creators is through creator-centric activations. So similarly to how the best way to create a product that people love is by placing the user love first, the best way to partner with a creator is by placing the creator first. So here, Peter, who again is a very well-known solopreneur, is partnering with Bolt, but he's not just saying, oh my gosh, I love Bolt, blah, 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 and it's your typical promotional post. He is hosting his own thing where people build games in 7 days, and Bolt is just a supporter of that initiative that is important to the creator. Figuring out a way to support creators in the things that they are already doing and their audience is already loving is a much more natural way to inject your product than giving the creator an ad copy and paying them to post it. And when you are paying creators to make a video about your product or service, make sure you still put them first. Let them express and share the story in their words, in the way that they know their audience will resonate with, instead of giving them a copy that you think will perform well. In 99.9% of the cases, they will do a much, much better job than you would in activating their following. Now, people are getting a little bit of fatigue from the virtual world, which is why I think it's so awesome to have things happen IRL. And the IRL things are a much, much higher signal of trust than just seeing things happen online. So in this case, ChatGPT, again, amazing tech creator, is here IRL being an interviewer for a panel by the founder of Bolt. I was there at this panel, I took this picture, and honestly, this was the highest signal of trust for me. Offline events really matter, but bringing in people from the online world, bringing creators who people trust to your IRL events is such a strong credibility signal. People want to see that you hang out in real life and not just getting shout outs on their feed. Now, speaking of creator-centric activations and IRL activations, there is nothing, and I mean nothing, that better presents this idea than a documentary project that Bolt.new funded that was directed by Greg Isenberg. And it is a documentary about AI and vibe coding. And the premise of this documentary series is really awesome. It explores this hype that we talked earlier about, where everyone is like, are you all vibe coding? Word of the week, vibe coding. So it leans into that hype and explores what vibe coding is, and it paints the story from the inside of this hype here in Silicon Valley to hundreds and thousands of people on YouTube. Why was this a smart move for Bolt? Very simple, because we are talking about this culture shift in we're now able to code. Vibe coding is a big thing, and there's many different players now. There's Lovable, there's Replit, and Bolt goes ahead and puts itself at the center of a film that explores this cultural phenomenon. There's an entire episode that is dedicated to the story, to the product, to the team, and another episode that talks about how Bolt was created. You cannot think of a more natural and authentic product placement than this. Very, very clever play on Bolt's part. Now, we will not be breaking this down, but these are top 10 YouTube videos. These are not just our founder danced around and it was funny and now we have 40 million views. These are high intent views, because if you look at what these videos are about, most of them are tutorials. So we have AI web app developer, import Figma using Bolt.new, I make a website that makes website. So every single person who watches this video doesn't watch them for entertainment, doesn't watch them for just like, let me spend my time watching something funny. They're very likely to at least make an attempt to replicate of what's happening within this tutorial video. And this goes back to the idea of generating content, user content, that features proof that something works, that something is valuable, rather than featuring hype. And this is very big because when you're just starting and you've got freaking nothing, there's this huge incentive to create anything that works. And often it's entertainment content that works. But that is not what will get you to the ultimate objective of helping people create something to an extent where they go to your website, use it frequently, and pay you money. Alrighty, now onto the paid ads. There's a time in every company's history when you finally made enough money, when you feel comfortable burning a lot of them on paid ads. And so I took a peek at the ads that Bolt is running, and I was pleasantly surprised with what I saw. A lot of the video ads are socially native first, which we love to see. They integrate culture things like starter story. We have this dude who is in many different scenarios showing how Bolt is helping him, whether it is to become a freelancer, make some money. There's ads that focus on specific functions, so someone trying to become a product manager, trying to prototype a feature. I've seen a few ads that feature the founder, which we love to see. There's this up-and-coming sales software that helps you build sales funnels called Perspective, and I've been flooded with their ads. And what they did so cleverly is they took a guy who is, I'm guessing, on their core team, maybe a CMO, to be in the center of all of the ads. And so every time you see the guy, you know it's about the sales funnels. And if you liked some of the ads that you've seen and you feel like you've gotten value from them, you're more likely to watch them later on, even though they're ads. So while it's good to experiment with all of these different creators, I do think it's important to have at least one persona who is a solid representation of the entire brand. I really want to show you my favorite ad, but this thing isn't loading, which is a bummer. But for now, maybe let's look at some of the hooks for the ads. And again, copying someone else's media strategy is not going to get you a viral product, but it is helpful to see what other people are doing. So let's see, these are the hooks, and this is how long the ad has been running. Unfortunately, I don't see how much money they put behind the ad or the results. Would be interesting to see that. But so one is like, for years we ask, why isn't building an app as easy as using Canva? This is great because you put something that people are already familiar with, which is Canva, and then you ask a question, which might kind of open a curiosity loop. It is a little bit of a stretch in a way that not many people would just sit down and think, oh, why isn't building apps easier? Come with me, let me show you how to make an app, put it in an app store, and could start making you a lot of money. This is a chill promise. Maybe like a timeline would be cool because you can totally be inviting to a university course that takes 5 years for you to learn all of this. So maybe say like, let me show you how in one day you can make an app, put it in an app store, and it could start making you money. Me and my friends play a lot of board games, and I really want to create a leaderboard for all of my friends so we can figure out who's winning overall. I kind of love this. Whenever something starts with a story, I really appreciate it. I can see myself getting pulled into this ad much more than any of the other ads. How I went from this to this without writing any front-end code. You already know that AI can build a beautiful website. Every starter story founder started somewhere. Love that because the starter story is also very famous within that builder community space. So playing on things that people are already familiar with is often effective. Your 9 to 5 might pay the bill. Your $1 million idea is still stuck in your head. That's a bit long. Most Bolt users aren't developers. I think this is kind of awesome, even though it's very promotionally, clearly, but that like we are helping non-developers as a first line. Good one. Okay, this was the ad that I wanted to show you, but unfortunately the loading time, I don't have the patience for this loading time. So I will just show it to you right here because I screenshotted it earlier and I pulled the transcript. But this ad essentially shows the founder talking about his mother. And I don't know if this is his mother or if it's just a stock image. It kind of looks like stock footage, but I don't know. And it says, my 73-year-old mom used Bolt to launch her first website. I think this is an amazing hook. I would actually be very curious to see their results, but I would bet a lot of money that this ad is outperforming many of their other ads. And what's interesting, if you look here, the next part is, here's the truth. If you're a solopreneur with an idea, you're expected to code like an engineer or pay tens of thousands of dollars. Developers spend weeks just getting their environment set up. For non-coders, it feels impossible. So we built something that lets anyone build an app or a website without having to learn how to code. Just type what you want to build, blah, blah. And so it goes into your typical pitch. But now imagine if that first sentence wasn't there. Imagine if the story wasn't set up. Imagine if the ad started from, we build something that lets anyone build an app or a website without having to learn how to code. That is lame. I don't know. This could be Framer. This could be Webflow, it just isn't, it's not hitting. It's not hitting in the same way that the story is hitting. And if you create content or you're a storyteller, you know that the more specific you can go, the more interesting what you're sharing will become. So here, the visual of the mother, the story, that the fact that it's a 73-year-old woman who used this random app, maybe a person who never heard about Bolt, right? And all they're hearing is there's a 73-year-old woman who never knew how to code, and she just launched their website because she used some app. Like, that is inherently interesting. That is a specific story, and even though the rest of it is just your typical pitch, it makes for a much more memorable story and probably a much more effective ad. Let me check last time. Nope, still not loading. Ugh. Anywho, and congratulations, my branding and growth loving warriors. You've made it to the last part, which is the socials. So I looked briefly at the Twitter accounts of the founder and of Bolt. They have been absolutely smashing it this year. So Bolt's founder got 1 million impressions, which on Twitter is freaking hard. He posted on average 2 times a day, got 17,000 likes. Okay, my bad. It's actually 180 days. It's not the past year. And so if we look, from April to September, his top 21 tweets got 734,000 impressions for 6,000 likes, which again, on Twitter, this shit is hard, but it is important because a lot of builders, a lot of other founders, a lot of people who are likely to benefit from using Bolt are on Twitter. And so sometimes you just have to be where your audience is. And in this case, it's on Twitter. And if we look at the theme of his highest performing tweets, they are about hiring, announcing an opening of a new office, launching new features. His personal post about running a marathon, very awesome. Design system integration, AI clone of himself, Anthropic. So a lot of the product updates and feature launches. Some things about the momentum of the Bolt. I think this is a good lesson because if you are a founder selling, it's very likely that other founders and folks who aspire to become a founder one day or are just interested in founders and want to be a little bit like them in their personal lives, they would resonate with the same struggles and would aspire to similar successes that you've had. And so in their case, the struggle of not having ARR for 7 years and then having that breakthrough is an inherently interesting story to all of these awesome people, and sharing it, like he shared it 3 times, right, will drive a lot of engagement and performance, and it would be valuable to people. He posted about community and hiring, AI ecosystem, personal reflections, and industry advice. Awesome. Now, if we look at the brand accounts, the brand account had engagement of 70 million. Jesus, I'm sorry, I did not do a good job in figuring out the dates. I think this is 180 days. This might be also 180 days. This might be also a year. I'm not sure. And so here are some of their higher performing tweets. We've got the world's largest hackathon, kind of as expected. We had new features that people probably were waiting for Claude Code to become available. That got them 1 million impressions. They've hosted little challenges for people in the community that also got them a lot of engagement. The founder demo video gone viral. I'm not sure if they've gotten any paid boost on this or if just organic 53 million. If that's the case, very admirable. But either way, I think the general theme here is that if you were to just go and replicate the exact wording for your product, it probably wouldn't work because the virality and the growth here happens within the context of all of these things that we talk about. It's not just a singular post that is making them go viral or making their product go viral. And now very quickly, let's look at the audience. I actually scraped the engagements on one of the viral posts to see who the people who are engaging are. And just as expected, many of them are solopreneurs, indie hackers, builders. They're into AI automations, they're into no-code, they're into developer tools, they're building in public, they're vibe coding, they're engineers, founders, marketers, there's some mega bots and fitness and life coaches. But essentially, they were able to cultivate that community of people who are high intent, who would care for the kind of product that Bolt is offering. And I think that's the best way to measure success. If you look at your audience and you look at the people who engage with the content that you're creating, and they're the kind of people who are going to be the ideal users, that is how you know that you've done a really good job with the type of content that you're posting. And remember that the content that you're posting will be performing well only when you have a good product that is actually making someone's life easier. It's not about the wording. All the simplicity helps. It's about everything. But most importantly, it's about user love.